Today's video is going to be a little bit less sweary than yesterday's. I did give everybody a disclaimer, so anybody that had the with yesterday's video, and I don't think you did, because there was a lot of people that commented and a lot of people that understood that my passion, which turned into a little bit of colourful language and emotion, it was coming from a good place. So appreciate everybody that's reached out with their support. And if you haven't, go back and have a look at yesterday's video. As I say, it is a little bit sort of like emotional, a bit sort of like some language that's used. So if that's not your cup of tea, that's fine. Just don't watch it. But if you're intrigued and you want to know what ruffled my feathers, go back and have a look at yesterday's video. As I say, there is some language in it, but it comes from a good place. It's all said in context. So anyway, appreciate anyone that's reached out with their support. There's a number of stories that we're going to talk about today. There's one story right at the very end, though. One story right at the very end. If you're about a similar age to me, now I'm 50. I know I don't look it, but children's programs back in the 80s. So if you're about my age, children's programs in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s would have been your thing. And there's a little bit of a silly topic that I'm going to delve into, which branches off of, if anybody knows, does anybody remember the program Rainbow? I'm going to talk about Rainbow in a little bit, right at the very end. So if that subject matter appeals to you, stick around to the end. If it doesn't appeal to you, then when I finish the last story, and I will say when I'm about to move gears and talk about Rainbow, then at that point, if you want to decamp and disappear, that's absolutely fine, no problem. The rest of it will be football-related stories you'll be pleased to hear. And as I say, your comments will be appreciated on all the topics I'm going to cover. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4... There's 5 player stories, ins and outs, that I'm going to talk about, and then the daft topic right at the very end. So, let's get stuck into this. The comment section's below, so obviously you can get your thoughts and points across on all of these things. And please don't forget to drop a like on the stream and give us a hype if you have one available, because remember, it's this that pushes the content places that otherwise wouldn't reach. Why not consider sharing some of your social media platforms just to sort of boost that a little bit further? And in the top left-hand corner, if the editing's gone correctly, there is a QR code, which if you get out your mobile device and scan that, takes you to our YouTube subscription page. Subscribing to the channel is free of charge, data safe, and it only takes a couple of seconds of your time. It only helps to grow the channel into something bigger and better. Come and join us on the journey, and we thank you very much indeed for your support. So one of the names that we've been linked with in terms of an incoming to London Stadium is Sorba Thomas, the Stoke City left winger. He's 27 years of age, and he's actually a local. He's from, if I remember rightly, Barking. Now, he was on the books at the West Ham United Academy as a youngster and was released. He then started something of a nomadic existence, and it's very much a rocky story. If you go and have a little look on, say, Wikipedia or Transfer Market, and you look at the clubs that he went to after leaving the West Ham United Academy, he starts his journey at Boreham Wood, and then he goes on a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of the lower leagues and one thing and another. And at one point in time, he's actually over the English Channel at Nantes. And then he rocks up at the Britannia Stadium playing on the left wing for Stoke City. Now, last season, which was his first season for Stoke in the Champ, 45. I think I'm going off the top of my head. I've not got any notes. 45 appearances, 10 goals, 11 assists. I'm pretty sure that's right. It could be 11 goals, 10 assists, but whatever. It was 21 goals and assists. And they're pretty impressive numbers from the left wing, let's be completely straight. And remember, we need to get someone on the left wing, because at the minute, our left wing options are James Ward-Prowse and Maxwell Cornet. Not exactly optimal, I would suggest. But anyway, that's where we are. So we need reinforcements at left wing. We need reinforcements all over the pitch, quite frankly. But Sorba Thomas is a name that's been mentioned, and as I say, in terms of his backstory, it's a real rocky story, and I love that, I really do. But I've got a few concerns, which I'm going to articulate, and again, you can give me your thoughts on it in the comment section. But at 27 years of age, he's not going to be a player that we're really going to look to make a profit on. And I understand that we can't do that with every player, but I'm just making that point. This is whatever our outlay is on Sorba Thomas, we're not doing it with a look to make any profit. When we would sign players like Matheus Fernandes and Crescencio Somerville, there was probably half an eye on, given their age profile and what we believed they would be able to reasonably achieve in their time with the club, that we would very probably make a profit down the track. And so it's proved to good effect. But that won't be the case with every player that we purchase. And that's fine. I've got no problem, because, it has to be a little bit of yin and yang every now and then. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is that He's had one season in the champ. So was it just a purple patch? Is it going to be that we're going to purchase a player who only has one season at the level that we're about to embark upon, and he's not able to replicate that? You'd think that because he's, and I don't mean this to be rude to Stoke City, is that you'd think that he being around better players would mean that he's able to show a better version of himself that he showed at Stoke City. That's what you'd think. It doesn't always work like that, though. There's so many other different factors. You know, for one thing, is he going to come back to West Ham? And although he's a local lad, is he going to fit in? Is he going to feel comfortable? How will that affect the dynamic? I don't know. I really don't know. But here's the thing. And I'm pretty sure it was X that's put something out there. Forgive me if I've got that wrong, but I'm going off the top of my head. As I say, I haven't done too many notes. I haven't done too many prep. I haven't had that much time to sort that out. I'm kind of going on the fly, but I'm flying by the seat of my pants, which happens quite often. But whoever it was, whether it was X or whether it's someone else, there's been information that's put out there that's alluded to the fact that despite the fact that Sorba Thomas' name has been out there for a few weeks now, there's been actually no contact between the two clubs. Stoke City and West Ham United representatives have not been in dialogue via a Teams call or in the same room or over a phone call or whatever it is. There has been no official contact, no official dialogue between the two parties about a link getting Sorba Thomas from the Britannia to London Stadium. It doesn't mean that West Ham aren't interested. Maybe they are. Maybe West Ham do hold an interest in Sorba Thomas. But right now, there's been no talks between the clubs. There's been no official conversations. Maybe there's been conversations between the club and the representatives of the player. But then again, that shouldn't happen, I don't believe. I think that's naughty West Ham. But like I say, the two clubs have not been in dialogue yet. £10 million or thereabouts is, I think, what will probably get the deal done. It's going to be in that ballpark figure. Maybe West Ham will be trying to get get him for £8 million. Maybe Stoke will be pushing for 10 to 12 million quid, and probably they'll arrive upon a point where it will go back and forth, and they'll arrive upon a price in the middle if they get in contact with one another, which is right now they actually haven't. But again, I mean, look, I'm recording this at 7 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday the 29th. We still, as far as I'm aware, we still haven't made a signing. And I don't know whether it's now the gallows humour in me, because I've now kind of gone past the point of getting concerned about it. I'm now almost laughing at the situation. It's completely farcical. We're 2 months into a transfer window virtually. We've got the season that's less than 2 weeks away with a Carabao Cup game against Portsmouth on the horizon. And we've not made any reinforcements. We've lost a load of players when we got relegated, players whose loans ended, players whose contracts ended, players who we've sold, and we've not replaced them. And like I say, I'm veering between concern and just laughing about it, quite frankly. That's where I'm at. But like I say, Sorba Thomas, despite all of the noise, there's been no dialogue between the clubs. Moving on. Edson Alvarez. Now, this is a little bit of a disappointing one for me, because I think there's a player there. And I know that he picked up cards like, the stamp collector collects stamps. I get it. How would he survive in the champ, where there's probably a little bit more rough house treatment going on? I mean, he might love that. He might roll his sleeves up, but he would be getting a fair amount of cards. I understand that. But here's the thing. Nuno's not even taken a look at him. Nuno's not even road tested him in pre-season football. This guy can play at centre-back and he can play at defensive midfield. He's clearly a class operator. He's got Premier League experience. So if we got promoted back up, he would be able to tick the box of Premier League experience. I would be much more comfortable if Alvarez came back into the fold. Nuno played him for a few games. But I get that time's running out. We've got one pre-season friendly left. I don't know whether maybe the hierarchy are actually approaching the Portsmouth game as an unofficial pre-season friendly. I think that would be really concerning, because that's a cup competition, and cup competition could really breed confidence in the players. So I hope that's not the case. I hope they're not looking at Portsmouth and thinking, well, that's our unofficial Boyle Sports Cup game. I mean, bloody hell. But apparently there has been talk between Real Sociedad and West Ham about Alvarez going to Sociedad. I don't know whether that's a permanent or a loan or whatever. I mean, there's always the possibility, I guess, that with Alvarez, and maybe the next player that I'm going to talk about, maybe there's a possibility there could be an agreement to terminate a contract and let the player go. I don't know, but I just would be happier if Alvarez was at least given an opportunity to show what he can do in Nuno's team in the champ. It's probably not going to happen. I think his race is probably run. I think it's a shame. The next player, though, not so much. Next player, I don't really have that vibe about. And again, it's a shame because it's like what could have been Niclas Fullkrug. Now, the guy's pretty much been broken since the day he turned up. There were a lot of things out there that said that this player was, although a good player, and you looked at his goal record for Germany, what he'd done for Dortmund, and in his career, and you sort of said, look, this guy operates at a high level. But you also clocked that he's also injured quite a lot. And, of course, he's turned up at London Stadium, and from that point onwards, he's pretty much been injured the whole time. He's not really been able to put... And I feel sorry for him. Don't get me wrong. Any player that's constantly injured, we all sort of like have a little bit of a joke and we roll our eyes and one thing and another. But fundamentally, his body keeps letting him down. And that can't be a good thing. So from putting that into sort of focus, we need to recognise that. But again, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and Lazio are interested in him. And it's like that now there's talk about he's going possibly to Lazio again. I'm not sure again whether it could be a loan deal, whether it could be a permanent deal. I mean, I think, why would a club buy him for, anything more than a, set of socket spanners or a packet of Daz or something like that? I'm not quite sure. I think probably what will end up happening is that we'll probably come to an agreement with Fullkrug and whatever, just to basically take the contract and just rip it up. What a shame. What a shame. A player that we're looking to bring in, another player that we're looking to bring in, Manor Solomon. Now, Manor Solomon, 27 years of age. He's a winger, come striker, whatever. I remember he was at Fulham a few years ago, and I remember he went on this run where he scored in several games on the bounce. A bit like what 𝘚𝘰𝘳𝘍𝘐𝑜 did last season for us. He just went on this little rampaging run where he scored goals left, right, and centre. But he's actually, at that point, he was actually at Fulham on loan from, I think it was Shakhtar Donetsk, and it was right at the beginning of when the war in Ukraine kicked off. So obviously a lot of their players, they were kicking their heels. The country that they were employed within was getting bombed and all the rest of it. So he shot off to Fulham, and as I say, he went on this little purple patch, but then he ended up getting bought by Spurs. But really, he's not had too much luck at breaking into the first team down at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. He's had a couple of loan spells, and one of those loan spells, he was actually at Leeds in the Championship. Now, in those 39 Championship games, he registered 22 goals and assists. Again, a pretty tidy number. Now, as a result of that, we're looking at getting Solomon through the door. Again, ticks the box of Championship experience, and he's also got experience in the Premier League. As I say, he's played a couple of games sparingly for Spurs. He had a loan spell at Fulham in the Prem where he did quite well and scored, a fair chunk of goals, in fairness, for a winger. It's just not worked out for him at Spurs, and he needs to move on. And like I say, the fact that he's done quite well in the champ, I sort of go, okay, well, that's a box ticked. Again, was it a purple patch? I think I'd be happier with the Solomon signing against the Sorba Thomas signing, because it's not just one season in the champ. He's obviously also had experience in the Premier League, and he's done quite well in the opportunities that he's had, both with Fulham on loan and at Tottenham. But to me, I'd actually be quite happy if we could get Manor Solomon through the door, but we'll have to just see what happens. Clair Todibo won't come as a surprise to you to hear that there are talks that he could be interested in Napoli. He could be out through the door. It's a real shame. What did we pay for him? 35, 38 million. This is a player that was on the books at Barcelona. Clearly, he operated at a high level. There was a lot of people at big clubs that thought a lot of him. We bought him from Nice. There was, at the time, a lot of names that were flying around. I think Juventus were the main competition that we had to get him through the door. But Tim Stuyton, who was our director of football at that point, went across on the jet, got him to sign on the dotted line. And then once he comes across, he managed to fall out with not one, not two, but three managers. Falls out with 𝘍𝘭𝘵. 𝘍𝘭𝘵's out. Falls out with Potter. Potter's out. Then Nuno, obviously, the game away at St. James's Park. I think it's fair to say that Nuno picked a team that a lot of people scratched their head at in terms of personnel, in terms of shape. And it didn't go too well. We started the game badly, and within, I think it was about 20 minutes, that Todibo was subbed off. And he copped the right ump about that and basically said, I will never play for Nuno. And then, of course, the next game against Leeds, he was nowhere to be seen. So he made good on his promise. Didn't even play the Colchester game behind closed doors. So his race is run. Now, what I heard was that, and I think it was on the OneFootball app, 17.5 million euros is believed to be the price that we've slapped on his head. I haven't done the exchange. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the region of about 15 million quid. We're going to take a heavy hit on this player after, 2 seasons? But we need to, I don't mean to be funny, look, he's a gifted player, but his fitness has always been a little bit of a concern. He always looked like he was pulling a tractor on his back as he was running half the time and didn't really last 90 minutes too often. In fact, I'm not too sure he ever did. So, and there was all that talk about, well, yeah, he had a crash when he was little and one leg shorter than the other and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, we've just shelled out nearly 40 million quid on this geezer. Are you for real? But I think it needs to happen. I think that there goes Winnie. She just wants to say hello. In fact, I think she's just seen a cat. I think she might have seen a cat. Have you seen a cat, Winnie? Anyway, so what do you think? You've got a comment section below about all of those things. Sorba Thomas, Edson Alvarez, Niclas Fullkrug, Manor Solomon, and Clair Todibo. There's quite a lot of things that you can cover in the comment section below. Now I'm going to get stuck into Rainbow. Now I'm going to get into my silly topic. So, earlier today, now look, some of you might know this. I can do an impression of Zippy from Rainbow, which a lot of people think is pretty spot on. A lot of people think is quite entertaining when I go into my silly Zippy mode. And one of my colleagues at work today, I was just doing what I was doing, and he just turned around to me and he said, oh, you might be able to have a new little job coming your way. And I said, what do you mean? And then he turned around and said, oh, did you not hear about Zippy? What are you on about? No, I haven't. And he turns around to me and he goes, well, the bloke that did his voice is dead. And I turned around to him and I said, yeah, he died years ago. And he went, no, he died yesterday. Sorry, what? Now, for anybody that's around about 50 years of age, which is my age, like I say, you'll remember Rainbow, you'll remember Zippy, Jeffrey, Bungle, Rod, Jane and Freddie, all of that lark, right? Now, I was always under the impression that the voice of Zippy was a gentleman by the name of Roy Skelton. Now, Roy Skelton also was the guy that in Doctor Who in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, he was the guy that did the voice of the Daleks. If you listen to the voices side by side, a Dalek in the 1960s, 70s, 80s version of Doctor Who and Zippy from Rainbow, you can kind of get that that's the same guy doing that voice. But it turns out that there were two guys doing the voice of Zippy. I've never heard of Ronnie Ledrew, okay? Now, if there's any members of the Ledrew family that are watching, sincerest condolences for your loss. May he rest in peace. And I thank you for his contribution to my childhood. However, I thought the voice of Zippy was Roy Skelton. And I guess there might be some people that might have seen that news if you read it and I didn't. Someone else told me that Roy Skelton was the voice of Zippy. I'm a little bit confused because I don't know what was the period of time that Roy Skelton was the voice of Zippy and Ronnie Ledrew was the voice, or did they share the responsibility? Was it on like a sort of like he's not available, so we'll get him to do it? I don't know, but if the gig is available, I'd be very interested, Mr. Jeffrey. Very interested indeed. Anyway, there's my Zippy impression. For those of you that have stuck around, there's my Zippy impression. Slightly maniacal, off the wall. Was he a Martian? I could never figure out. I'm sure he was a Martian. George was like a pink hippopotamus, wasn't he? And then you had Bungle was a weird one. Bungle would be in bed and he'd wear pajamas. And then when he was out, there was no clothes on at all. Not quite sure what was going on there. That was a weird one. But anyway, I said the last one would be a bit of a silly one, didn't I? I gave you, again, like yesterday's video where I gave a disclaimer about being a little bit sweary, I gave you a disclaimer at the beginning of the video that the last story wouldn't be anything to do with West Ham football. It would be a completely daft story about Rainbow, specifically, and Zippy, more pertinently. Ronnie Ledrew, the voice of Zippy, who I didn't know was the voice of Zippy. passed away yesterday. And I thought the voice of Zippy was 𝘍𝘶𝘮𝘀, and it turns out they both were the voice of Zippy. Who knew? I didn't. Anyway, you've got the comments section below. Comments section is below. You've got quite a bit to get stuck into. Appreciate you sticking around. This one's been a little bit longer than normal, but hopefully you've got quite a lot of content there to get stuck into and you enjoy it. And as always, guys, please feel free to drop a like on the stream. Give us a hype if you've got one available, because that's what pushes content out to places it otherwise wouldn't get. You can also boost this further by sharing this on your social media platforms. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, top left-hand corner, subscribe to the channel by scanning that QR code. It's free, it's data safe, it helps to grow the channel into something bigger, and it only takes a couple of seconds of your time. So come and join us on this journey. Occasionally we veer into silliness, like talking about who was the voice of Zippy and stuff like that. But yeah, come and join us. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time. Come on, you Irons!